Buenas noches, Chile from the Philippines. Good evening here in Manila and good morning in Santiago, Chile. How are you, Professor Rodrigo Alvarez?
I'm fine, and thank you so much for having me in this interview. And of course, I am so happy to be in touch with you once again after a couple of years, meeting you in the United States at SUSI program.
Right.
What was a wonderful time.
Thank you very much. Are we secure online during the pandemic? Tonight, our guest from the Universidad Mayor will discuss with us Chile's cybersecurity crackdown during the COVID-19, looking at the evolving trends, data privacy, and countermeasures. We'll start with the updates on the coronavirus in Chile. The World Health Organization recently called the attention of Chile of its controversial virus-free certificate, allowing Chileans to return to work and even workers who contracted the virus. What are the policies from your government and other medical interventions that Chile is implementing?
Well, first of all, I think that we should make an update of the data. Until yesterday, Chile was the number 3rd in a South American region.
Yeah, right.
If you check some of sources, you know, for example, World Meter sources, which is another good sources to see beyond the Johns Hopkins data.
Right.
This source says that Chile is in the 3rd position after Brazil and Peru with a total of almost 87,000 cases. However, I mean, if you compare with Brazil with almost 440,000 cases, Peru with 150,000 cases, Chile is roughly in a good position in the number of cases, but of course more than Ecuador, Colombia, Argentina, Bolivia, Venezuela. I know that we can have a sort of doubt in the number of Bolivia as well as Venezuela, but at the end Chile is in a 3rd position with a number of cases. However, which is a real interesting thing, is that the number of deaths still is a little bit low, with 890 deaths, but sadly this weekend we are waiting for the number of 1,000 deaths, which is a real bad number for us. But if you divide those deaths per million people, we have around 55 deaths per million people, which is one of the lowest in the region. However, we are going to face a real bad situation during the last 2 or 3 weeks that we are going mostly to analyze in the next meeting, you know. Then, in relation with your question, I think that the analysis of the virus-free certificate is right, you know, is right. It was a mistake of the government, even though the government has done a lot of good things, but the virus-free certification had two main complaints. One of them was why to some people you are going to give a virus-free certificate, meanwhile to others no. This meant a sort of, or this was seen as sort of discrimination. For that reason, the government, of course, needed to move back in that decision, as well as the World Health Organization recommendation that that sort of decision was a bad decision. But also, if you want to make a most comprehensive analysis, we can highlight at least other 3 measures that has been highly criticized in the Chilean society as well as in other part of the world. For example, the idea of a safe return that was thought as a return to school, to the university, to work. Also the concept which was coming from, which was copied from Europe, the new normality maybe you have heard about the new normality.
Right, right.
Yes, especially for social and labor interaction, with the idea of keeping the social distance, you know.
Sure.
And the last idea or message sent by the government in Chile was called La Meseta, or the plateau, with the idea that the curve was being flattened. I mean, if you look the Chilean data 2 or 3 weeks before, you know,
right, right.
then you could thought that we were in the process of flattening the curve.
Yeah.
But of course, it was not true and it was not right. And some people believe and analyze that these three policies or these three measures were highly wrong, you know, because at the end sent a message of normality that was not happening.
Right.
Then that was, you know, a real confrontation between some part of the society vis-a-vis to the government.
Yes.
However, we can analyze another measure, which is the main of your question, and you also can check this measure for almost every country around the world. If you check at the OECD data, you know, for example, Chile has applied a curfew between 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. As well as, excuse me?
So there are curfews that
yes.
are allowed in the country.
Yes, as well as, for example, some cities are fully locked down. For example, my city, the metropolitan city, Santiago, is totally locked down. All the neighborhood are locked down. People age 25 cannot go outside of their homes. Borders are open for nationals and residents, but if you are coming from outside, which almost during the last 2 or 3 weeks has not been happening, you must stay 14 days under quarantine, mandatory. School and universities are closed. Events of more than 50 people are prohibited. However, in this point, there is a high contradiction, you know, because how is possible to think that, I mean, which is the difference between events or meeting of 48, 49, 47 with 50 people? If some of them is ill, of course, you are under the high, you know, dangers. I mean, you cannot allow any sort of events, any sort of meeting, because why 50 people? It's a lot of people. Or 49 is almost 50, but you are not going against to the decision. Fiscal measures as well. We have had a lot of fiscal measures, or several fiscal measures. For example, a lot of money has been reoriented for detection and treatment. Some policies have been engaged to care household incomes, as well as economy facilities to access money, you know. And in relation with health system, we have launched a hard national campaign to prevent and to detect the illness. We have been able to make the testing process free for testing. Yes, for testing. Yes, process free for national health fund. I mean, those people that that are not able to stay at private health sector, they can go to the national health fund sector, and they are free to have the test but a doctor must make a prescription for that test. Hospital capacity has been reinforced, and a mutual relationship between a private and a public sector has been enhanced. In the meaning that no one can stay without attention, without care attention. Income support also is another policy that the government has implemented. For example, government have gave a cash transfer, which is called Bono COVID, for the poorest family. Around 2 million households is going to receive that transfer. Also, government enacted a bill for a second transfer for the 60% poorest population, which means around 4.9 million people. And lastly, during the last 2 or 3 weeks, government announced the delivery, which has started, of 2.5 million family basket. However, in this point, it is highly interested to give you a number. For example, the cash transfer is for 50,000 Chilean pesos, which means around $62 US. And the minimum wage in Chile is 320,000 pesos, which is around 397 US. It means, $62 US is really a small amount of money. You cannot live with 62,000.
For a family, right?
Yes, it's really low. Another decision took by the government was the law for job protection, which is a really good decision, but also is a problematic one. Why? Because around 4.5 million workers are going to be under this law for job protection. But the point is this: for example, the payment at the first month is only 70% of the original salary. At the second month, 55% of the original salary. At the third month, 45%. And if the crisis is going beyond the third month, at the fourth month, they are going to receive only 40% of the salary. I mean, if you return to the data I told you of 320,000 pesos, almost $400, it means that at the fourth month, they are going to receive only $158. I mean, I know something is better than nothing. That is right. But this is a real hard time, hard time. Even more, we are going to have almost the same rate of unemployment that we had at the beginning of the 80s in the 20th century. I mean, at the beginning of 80s, we had a strong economic crisis called the debt crisis, la crisis de la deuda, At that time, we had around 22% of unemployment. And right now, a couple of days, the numbers are close to 15 to 16% of unemployment. We are just catching that number of 21% of unemployment. This is a real crisis. This is a real hard time for Chile, as well as other countries around the world and at the region,
Right, but Dr. Rodrigo, that goes to the next question that I would like to ask, because it seems like the COVID-19 laws are in place in Chile, but only recently your president says that your healthcare system is very close to the limit, given that there are 70,000 cases of the virus that have been recorded in Chile. You said earlier that it's more than that, and more than more than 700 people have died already. Now that Latin America is the new epicenter of the disease, how is your government responding to the extended lockdown? I heard that there's an extended lockdown ongoing right now in Santiago.
In relation with this question, I think that first of all we must comment. At least we must comment to report that we have just released this week.
Right,
One of them is coming from the Universidad de Chile, University of Chile, and this document is saying that we are going to experience a harder time than today. I mean, for example, in the meaning that you are asking me, you know, in the idea that you are asking me that South America is the new epicenter of the disease, and Chile is no exception. That is my point. Chile is no exception, and in this meaning, you know, for example, according with this study, during the next 2 or 3 weeks, Chile is going to have around 7,000 cases per day. 7,000 cases per day. We are just in 3,900, 3,800, 4,000. We are going to almost duplicate the numbers for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Right, and that is still in the first wave of the coronavirus disease, right?
This is the first wave, you mean, you know?
Right.
Yeah, and this scenario is we are going to go to this scenario. The bad news is that we are going to have around between 3,000 to 3,500 critical patients, but we have only a capacity to attend around 2,000 critical patients. I know, as we were talking about, we all know that the government is trying to do the best, and of course, you know as well that it is a hard time and it is not easy to do the best at the same time for all of these cases. But we are going, if this study is right, we are going to have really hard time in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. And also this is going to make the horrible decision of the last bed. I saw that you were talking with our Italian friend, Rafael, and the Italians were under this horrible decision during 1 month, which is the last bed, and who is the patient that is going to have the last bed. This is really, really a bad situation and a scenario for us. In relation with the government responding, I think that we can analyze three points. First of all, the Chilean government is developing the sanitary residence. You know, they are opening special places for receiving those people that are showing some you know, they are ill, but they are not critical ill.
Okay.
Then,
so these are the asymptomatic. We call it the asymptomatic, yes. Right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And this is a good idea. The second one is the change of the message. Okay. During the last 3 days, yes, especially because they are working on the lockdown, but not at all country, not all the country is locked down, but also because they are recognizing that the government has made some errors, some mistake in the decisions. For example, the decision that we were talking about at the beginning, you know, the normality, the opening the commerce, the malls, you know, the shops, they are recognizing that they did some mistakes. And finally, which is just a couple of days ago, the government has called for a national agreement. This is a good idea, but we are following the process because, as you know, always you have some sort of part of the political parties that are not agree with this sort of agreement. Then the government is trying to push for a social agreement with all parties in Chile, especially trying to resolve the trying to see after COVID-19, because the economy is really weak as well as around the world, and Chile is no exception. The commerce, a lot of small commerce has been closed. They have broke, and then, as I told you, the unemployment is rising, and right now we are in 15.6% of unemployment.
Yeah. You know, what I like about the conversation is the acceptance of the mistake of the Chilean government, and they are trying to rectify these policies in order for Chileans to survive the pandemic, and that is a very good news for us here outside Chile. And but we talk about the cybersecurity in Chile. Last year, your government approved the new strategies on cybersecurity, which is aimed at developing Chile's data privacy regulations in connection with national security matters. Now that there is a widespread pandemic, how are you using your national broadband for contact tracing and other interventions against the COVID-19?
Well, in relation with the cybersecurity, I think that we must analyze from several perspectives. Okay. First of all, the broadband has allowed us to be connected. It is true. Our system, if was well established in the society, it was not prepared for this situation, and we have had a lot of trouble to be connected. Not all the time, not all the day, but in some days, in some hours, we have had a lot of trouble to be connected. We have been able to move the education from presence education to virtual education, especially at the university level. We have been able to move those classes from the university building to computer. And if at the beginning there was a sort of resistance of the student, they understood that this was the only solution. No other solution was on the table. It was not possible to follow the education without this system. That is a real good answer. Of course, still we have a lot of problems with the connection, and the companies is trying to resolve, and some of them is under scrutiny from the government, as well as from the society, as well as from the customers, asking them why they are not given the good service as we are waiting for.
Right.
And also at the other position, there has been a high discussion on the use of data, especially with the COVID. You know, how you can trace the cases, how you can use the technology to trace the cases. And it is possible to trace the cases without trespassing your own security, your own information, your own freedom. that has been a real hard discussion in Chile as well as in many other countries around the world. You know about the COVID app. I know that you know that has been trying to be established using in France, Australia, many other countries. But that sort of technology also is trespassing our freedom and our liberty, because it is possible that the app can catch some sensitive information of each one of us. But I think that, of course, we can criticize a lot of things in the process of using this technology, but it has been able to all of us to continue in contact. For example, this interview. This is amazing. We can talk each other. Even we have 70,000 kilometers between Manila and Santiago.
Yes.
70,000 kilometers. And this technology was there, but we were not using it. We were not using it. But and the other thing interesting to analyze in this issue, in this topic, the security and the cybersecurity, is that Chile has been in a process of actualization. As you commented me a couple of days before, we are in the process of derogating our old law, which is the number 19223, and we are going to be more connected, if not totally connected, with the Budapest Convention, which means that we are actualizing, making an update of our law, changing it and adjusting it to the new reality. And we had been experiencing a lot of attacks, cyber attacks, and filtration of data, and we are working hardly to modernize the law.
Right. And that makes us think if we are secure online. And we know for a fact that the coronavirus is a new challenge for cybersecurity, not only in Chile, but in the entire, around the world. For a strategic reason, the COVID-19 pandemic is not only a respite for cyber attacks against companies, as you mentioned earlier on. If anything, the situation is worse as organizations divert resources to other parts of the business, leaving their infrastructure exposed. Now, cyber criminals won't back down just because a global crisis is in the making. And if anything, they will attack the more vulnerable industries to capitalize on the urgency of the situation. Now, the healthcare is obviously on the front lines also, and the proof of that is the flurry attacks against hospitals. Now, how is Chile responding to these cybersecurity threats? Are there punishments to the offenders? And as analysts, what are your recommendations to better secure the cyberspace during a pandemic?
I think that, for example, we had, I know that it was a global discussion, highly concerned, for example, using precisely this platform, Zoom. According with all analysis, Zoom was vulnerable for catching our data, for example. What I am trying to say that, of course, under this situation of COVID-19, as you are analyzing, we have had more concern on sharing our data, on using this the technology, and trying to defend ourselves against these cyber attacks. But we are vulnerable.
Right.
We cannot be all the time prepared for every single cyber attacks. But the law, and in our case, the change of the law, is going to make most difficult and especially more specific the sort of attacks. And it means that the cyber attackers must be or are going to be more concerned in the action that they realize, even though, as you know, in terms of security, they are going all the time trying to attack, especially those areas that are sensitive for national security and the normal function of the society. You know, for example, last year or a couple of years we had an attack against the bank system. Filtration of a lot of data of the credit cards, and even more, we had attack against the government's ministries. Then all the time we are under attack. In essence, or in a nutshell, you and me and everyone must take all the
precautions, right?
Yeah, the precaution.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is very interesting, especially that given that everyone now is taking online seriously, everyone is indulging into this kind of endeavor, so we must secure and protect ourselves, because basically everyone is vulnerable, as you said earlier on. So,
I mean, even the governments, even the state.
I agree.
Even even the most secure companies are under, attack and are vulnerable for cyber attacks.
I agree. I totally agree.
You must remember that some countries even have considered as a national security cyber attacks, and they are decided to respond military, not necessarily using the computers, but military against those which are attacking cybernetically.
Yeah, it comes in different forms, because now, especially for the fifth domain, they call the cyber warfare. They're also using cybersecurity there. So, I mean, not only individuals, but also states and non-state actors are into it. So we have to behave properly and maybe use it rightfully and optimize it properly. I think so.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much, Hermano Mayor Rodrigo, my good friend. Thank you for sharing your advocacy with us. It's already midnight here in Manila, and thank you very much for sharing your time with us.
I am so happy to be interviewed by you, and so happy to see you once again, even though, as I told you, we are so far away.
Right, right. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
A ti, muchas gracias.
Right.